Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bob's Bookshelf. I'm your host, Bob. Today, a beautiful book by one of my all-time favorite designers, Bruno Monguzzi. This is a monograph he designed for himself, titled Bruno Monguzzi, 50 Years of Paper, 1961 to 2011. There are many, many remarkable things about this book. And of course, there are many, many remarkable things about Monguzzi and the work he has made. But one thing that really stands out for me is that the breadth of work in this book from 1961 to 2011, I was born in 1961. So this book contains literally like the scope of my life at that time. So in my entire life cycle, he's been working. And I think what I find especially interesting and inspiring about that, as I myself get older, is that you can have such a long and productive life in design, that your work and the work that you see can continuously be inspiring to you, even long after you've started your work. So let's pin the main image and get started. I'm confusing myself. There we go. All right. So here we go. Unlike the other books that I show where I kind of go through in order, this one I'm going to jump around a little bit, but let's start with the cover as usual. So this is a soft cover book with a vellum jacket. So on the cover itself is only an image. This image is a detail from one of Monguzzi's posters, and all the typography is on the vellum, okay, which is super beautiful. The contrast from the gray, the very soft gray tones on the front to the bright red flaps on the interior is really, really terrific. Let's get this centered. So the first part of the book is on a different paper, then the center part is on a coated paper for all the imagery, and then the very end of the book is an interview, and that I think is on a different paper from the front, but it's probably the same. Okay, so what order to do this in here? So the book is in Italian and English. The Italian text is always signaled by a black bar at the top, and the English in red, okay? Sets up a very simple, elegant grid at the beginning and slowly becomes more complex as the need for more complexity becomes necessary. One especially interesting thing about this book is this big front section, which is filled with stories and reminiscences of Monguzzi by other designers. So there's this whole front part with people talking about him. This one is especially beautiful. And then it ends here. And then we get the title page. So 1961, 2011, Bruno Monguzzi, 50 Years of Paper, okay? And again, the black for the Italian and the red for the English in these columns as we go through. So perhaps now's a good time for me to tell this story. So in 1985, I was a grad student at Kent State University, and Kent State had these wonderful study abroad programs. And so I went on the Kent Summer in Switzerland, where I studied for 3 weeks with some really quite fantastic Swiss designers, one of whom was, and we're going to switch gears here, one of whom was Ruedi Rüegg, who made this really beautiful book on basic typography. One night during Ruedi's week, our guest lecturer was Bruno Monguzzi. And one of the things Bruno talked about was grids. So just to give you an idea, before we get into the Monguzzi book any further, is to show you this book that was written and designed by Ruedi Rüegg. Okay, and this is classical, high Swiss, international style typography. 3-column grid, consistent hangline. The hangline is consistent all the way through. All right, it's unrelenting in its clarity of organization all the way through. Okay, like so. As an aside, though, my favorite part of this book is this section in the back that looks at the development of writing into type, connecting that with a historical figure, and then further connecting that with architecture. I have not seen anything like this anywhere else. The idea that, you can somehow connect all of these things together. So, we have Walbaum, Napoleon, and the Arc de Triomphe, all in one kind of connected area. Similarly, we have Times New Roman, Herbert Hoover, and Alvar Aalto. So fascinating way of organizing all this. But the grid here, while extremely useful, is applied in an also extremely rigorous manner. Okay. So on that evening, when Bruno came to speak to our workshop during Ruedi's week, Bruno spoke about grids in a very, very different way. And I have highlighted in the back here a little section that I have found really, really inspiring. Okay, so he writes about this other way of thinking about grids. The grid is more complex, and the sizes to be used for the images are not based on an elementary system of multiples. In other words, the standard classical Swiss kind of grid. The page is structured in accordance with specific functions and dimensional needs. And he goes on from there. And so I found this extremely, extremely inspiring and helpful to think about as I design my own work, especially when I'm designing books. So to give you an idea, I have another book designed by Monguzzi, this book on Studio Boggeri. Monguzzi began his career at Studio Boggeri. He worked there for just a few years, from 1961 to 1963. This book comes in a slipcase with this beautiful interconnected closed circular form that was sort of their logo. And then it goes into the book itself. So Monguzzi also designed this book. And you can see how the structure is quite a bit different than the structure that Rüegg used in his book. So there's this central area where images run, and then things fall down from the top and rise up from the bottom, and sometimes they break through in this way as well. This leads to a really dynamic arrangement of images on the spread, as you can see. And then sometimes it's quieter, sometimes it's more active. Okay, so just really gorgeous. And then when in Monguzzi's own book, this way of thinking about the grid becomes even more energetic. So back to Monguzzi visiting my workshop during Ruedi Rüegg's week. So by the end of the evening, Monguzzi and Rüegg were shouting at each other about the various ways of using the grid. And at one point, Monguzzi was standing on a drawing table, jumping up and down to make his point. Honestly, I don't remember what the point was, but I do remember the energy with which he expressed it. And anyway, it was a great story and a great experience. So, all right, so back to the book. So here we are at the title page, going through, and we're just getting rolling here. And then here we get to the main essay for the beginning of the book. So there are a number of beautiful typographic details here. So these bold numbers, I'm going to have to lift this up so you can see the bold numbers on the edge of the text are pages where you can find this work illustrated. Okay. And then these smaller, lighter numbers that are below them refer to the footnotes as we go through. So those are the references. All right. And so this whole front section operates in this way. All right. With the images falling out from the center. Okay. So that runs for a while. And then we get to where the color plates begin. So color plates. All right, the paper shifts from this light off-white, almost gray paper to now a coated and more glossy paper so that the images reproduce better. Okay. So already we can see that even compared to the Boggeri book, the way the images are distributed on the page is far more freeform, and certainly compared to Ruedi Rüegg's book, they are far more intuitively placed. For me, this is like the difference between high Swiss international style modernism and what I think of as warm modernism. It's still modernism. It's still using the same kinds of principles, but they're applied in what feels to me like a more humanistic way. So, so there's some great little typographic details here in terms of how he ties the images to the captions, and those may not be very visible to you. So I'm going to lift this up again. So if you look at the top here, there's this teeny little number, right? 3-7. All right. And then at the bottom, in English and Italian, you can see how the captions are tied to the images. All right. So one thing that's really interesting about this is how everything is pushed to the perimeter, right? Which allows the whole center of the page, and indeed the whole spread, to operate in a more plastic kind of way. All right. So again, so we have a sense that things are tied, right, to edges, and that there's some kind of central axis going through the book. And in fact, we can see it right here, here to here to here, right? This line going through. One really beautiful thing he does is he uses these details of his work as we go through. Okay. Another detail as part of this series of works that he did for a long time for an art museum. And then let's see here, forgetting where I was going to go next. We jump to this, okay, to this next detail. Another thing I love about Monguzzi's work is his playful use of typography, playful and expressive use. So this is a detail of this poster here, right? And it's another detail here with this really interesting and beautiful typographic grouping. All right. One of his most famous projects was the identity system for the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, which was just an M and an apostrophe and an O, which was cropped in different ways. Once you knew what it was, it needed only the most minimal expression of the logo. Here, you can see it more in full. All right. Okay, let's move on to. All right, one of the most interesting things that he did is, so in Switzerland, there is a tradition of making posters for pedestrians. So here in the United States, posters are usually, that we see in public, are most often billboards. They're enormous, but they're far away. We don't experience them on the street when we're walking. In Switzerland, that's different. And traditionally, the posters are in, there are 3 of them, okay? So the stands on the street that hold the posters will hold 3 posters. Oftentimes, there are 3 posters for 3 completely unrelated things. Sometimes they are the same poster repeated 3 times. But one thing Monguzzi did, and I think this is really ingenious innovation, is they bought all 3 positions, but did not repeat the poster 3 times. So in other words, he started thinking about the poster as a triptych. So for this poster for an exhibition of photography, the central area is what you might consider the traditional poster with all the text and information. And then on either side of that are images from the exhibition. All right. This is a technique he uses time and time again to great effect. This is one of my favorite posters by him from the Museo, the museum, the Contemporary Art Museum of Lugano. I'm trying to translate this from Italian. And here, the same triptych idea for an exhibition about Sophie Tauber Arp. So the text, an image of the artist, and an image of the artist's work. Another thing about this, this particular set of posters is this really remarkably beautiful logo that he made. This little, I don't know how well it's going to show up or if the camera is going to focus, but it's this dot with an A and an M embedded in it. And it's just this, this beautiful little glyph that moves around. Here's another one of these triptychs. So you can imagine being on the street and seeing these and how just beautifully engaging that would be to experience. Okay. Here's the poster from which the image on the cover is taken. All right, what is next here? Okay, here's another one of the triptychs for an exhibition about Kandinsky. Here, the imagery is blending across the 3 posters, so it becomes even more of a single unit as you view it. Okay, so here is an instance where just the informational part of the poster appears by itself. This is why I think this is such an interesting strategy that he's developed. Here's some more beautiful examples of the expressive typography that he employs. He is not afraid to mix typefaces up. Okay, let's move on to something else. And again, let's keep paying attention to the way the pages are structured, right? What the experience is as we move through. Okay, things moving to the edges, right? And then the space moving in a beautiful horizontal way, then broken periodically by beautiful details that then reveal a simpler, more open spread. Just an amazing typographic mix here. Okay. So I think for me, just seeing how the grid works in this book is remarkable, aside from how fantastic the work itself is. Here's another triptych, really incredible. Okay, so let's jump. We're almost done here. So we get to the end and the paper shifts back to the original stock. I'm pretty sure this is the same stuff. This looks like the same material. Okay. And back here we have an interview with Monguzzi. And again, the black indicates Italian and the red indicates the English. Really sweet details here typographically. There's a tiny little red line that breaks each question and answer. And the red line is red because it's the English. On the Italian side, the little line is black. Okay. The question lives out here on this axis, and the answers are all inset. In terms of where the images are placed and how these little numbers work, that's the same as what we saw in the front section of the book. Okay. What's really nice about this, and I'm not going to read from the book any longer, but if you're interested in Monguzzi's work, this interview is really, really amazing and illuminating because he goes through and talks pretty specifically about his process, where his ideas come from, and how he develops his form. One very interesting thing I found, there was a quote about Monguzzi from an interview in I Magazine from 1990, where the interviewer says, Monguzzi has developed a graphic language untouched by the passing whims of fashion. I think that's a great quote. I don't know how absolutely true that is, but what it does say to me is that he's made a body of work that is uniquely his, which is great. That's something we all dream of. Okay, so here we are, and the interview goes on. And then we reach the end with the credits again, black for Italian, red for English, and then the colophon page. Okay. Cover. Again, the red on the inside. Just a beautiful, beautiful colophon page. Again, using the indenting system to manipulate the hierarchy of information. Okay. So, fantastic book. If you can find it, and if you like this work, absolutely worth having in your library for sure. Okay. So there we go. Remarkable designer, remarkable book. You know, not every designer's monograph that is designed by the designer is a great book, as well as showing great work. But for me, this is certainly one of the all-time greats in that regard. So anyway, that's what I got for you this episode. Thanks so much for watching, and take care. We'll see you around. Bye.